body, where we would be able to then use that information to help us take our computer graphics makeup and place it over exactly the place where we wanted to put it vis-a-vis Nick's makeup. So Nick is making up a lot of Arnold's head and down around here, and then right on the edge he's putting this tracking marker, which allows us to track our computer graphics onto that spot. And so he worked with us very closely in terms of blending the edges and how we would put all our things together. It was incredibly helpful and great fun to work with. Then when we got into post-production, then we took computer graphics and matched into what he was doing and then locked it onto Arnold's face, which was no small task, I can tell you, but made much easier by Nick's cooperation and his expertise. Part of what makes movies great is that you can produce something on the screen that you could never see in reality. And we all have our imaginings of what the great plagues of the Bible were like, the locusts and the flies and scarabs and the rivers running with blood and all this kind of stuff. But you never can see that. And in filmmaking, we can bring that to the screen.
Look at this! Sons of the Pharaoh! Give me frogs! Flies, locusts, anything but you. Compared to you, the other plagues were a joy.
I'm so very sorry it was an accident.
One of the things about Imhotep is that he has to be very powerful, very frightening, and filled with danger. Otherwise, he's not a very good villain, is he? So we sat down with Steve and worked out a whole bunch of things that we thought that he could do that would be really spectacular.
Scarabs are really nasty little bugs, and some of them aren't so little. They come to life through, I guess, the magic of ILM. And you don't want to be anywhere near these things when they do come to life.
We designed the scarab beetle from a hybrid of all sorts of nasty-looking real insects. We made our own hybrid, super ugly, hungry beetle.
They are sort of the minions of the mummy who run around devouring people in their path. And they have some adventures with the singular scarabs attacking people and some with thousands and thousands of them chasing after everybody. Again, you know, able to direct specific action with an animal and the ability to have many, many, many of them and have them work in relatively specific fashion is really what we were trying to do.
They have to be creepy, mysterious, a little bit magical. These guys have been entombed for over 3,000 years, and when the mummy wakes up, so do the massive quantities of scarabs. And they do have kind of a magical element to them. They had to be jet black, but with a degree of sparkly iridescence, kind of a blue-pink iridescence. And it was kind of tricky to create shaders and lighting that would work in a really darkly lit set of really black, shiny objects. How do you make them black and dark, but still look like they're responding to light, and have them be iridescent? So the scarabs kind of have a threatening personality.
This shot is one of the early shots in the film where we have our computer-generated scarab beetles. And in this case, we've had the actor who's performing on the film set, and we've got film footage of him writhing around in the bandages. What we've got to do is add some scarab beetles to that. And so the first thing we need to do is match his movements. We create a computerised version of the mummified guy and have him moving around exactly like the guy did on set. And then we put little lines on him where some of our hero beetles are going to move. We've built a little scarab in the computer and we've painted that and created some material so that its skin looks all shiny and so it looks like a beetle. And we have one of the animators has created a run cycle for that guy. So what we do is map out where it will go on the man, and we let it run along these paths. So that takes care of our heroes, but as you can see, we've got tons of these guys, and you know, more is what we were aiming for on this. And so what we've done there is we've taken a system where we represent each scarab by what we call a particle in a particle system. And so we have all these little points that represent the scarabs falling out of the bucket here, and we've programmed them so that they'll just run round. They know about the the box here and they know about the body and they try and avoid it and each other, and so they end up creating this swarm of scarabs running over the guy. We render those images out, which is what we call actually creating the final pictures, and we combine those with the original film of the guy, and it looks like the scarabs are crawling over his body.
We did a plague of locusts that crashes across this desert and smashes through a wall and blows down on our heroes and just inundates them with with incredible numbers of locusts. And of course, using the computer graphics technology, we can actually not only create more locusts than you could ever wrangle or would want to, and direct them to some kinds of specific actions to get exactly the look that we're looking for.
So what we've got here is a plague of locusts that the mummy conjures up out of the desert, and in this case each of the locusts is represented on our computer by a little particle in a particle system. And we take each of those and we apply what we call forces, different things to make them move and fly around, and they avoid each other and then they're blown by the wind, just so it doesn't look like, a regular pattern. They'd actually shot this guy on location, and they'd put all the locusts into a refrigerator to make them a bit dopey and then just put them all over his body. So when we got the plate, there was already quite a few just sitting there, but they weren't flying at all. So we've added in a whole heap here flying around, and there's actually a couple of real ones that jump off and you can't tell the difference.
What have we done?
He can even barf flies, which is great fun to watch.
He releases a plague of flies into a marketplace where we have people running around, scattering and trying to protect themselves from these bugs.
We ended up replacing the whole lower half of the mummy's face, and then we had to take that, match him in the computer, so we'd have some object so that the flies we'd know where they would come out of, and so that we could hide them down his throat as they well up here.
Starting out with the very simplistic, let's say, point A to point B direction of the shot, the basic notion of a stream, could be water, could be anything coming out of someone's mouth. Then it's just a matter of adding randomness on top of that. And usually that's in the various forms of turbulence and noise are added to the motion. These white squares represent hundreds of flies. You can barely see him here. He's yellow. He shoots the flies out. It hits a window, and the flies go circling around a courtyard full of people.
They'd shot all these people railing around, but a couple of them weren't giving really... The performances weren't that great, I guess. So selectively the director asked us to cover up some of these guys with bigger clumps of flies and that sort of thing.
He raises the desert by just lifting the sand off the floor of the desert, and it roils into these gigantic sandstorms, just go racing across the desert, destroying everything in their path. And he sends this out after our heroes in the airplane and tries to bring them down with this giant sandstorm.
Here's sort of just a fairly simple wall of sand. It actually is, when I say fairly simple, it's a particle render. We've done a particle simulation using a Maya software package, and so each grain of sand is represented by a particle in the computer. And we're able to change the colour of that and add shadows and that sort of thing to try and look like it's a wall made of sand. So what we want to do is have the mummy's face come out of that. What we've done here is taken a model of the actor's head and digitised that and done some model work to make it match our needs. And an animator has created some different face shapes and that sort of thing. In this case, we really wanted to elongate and stretch the face as it comes out of the sand because it's supposed to be made of sand. So we added an extra set of controls that would allow us to really pull down on that and to really get these exaggerated expressions. From that, we create this depth map, we call it. Essentially, it's a render of this where the nearest point comes out white and the farthest away point comes out black. And we can use this information with our particles that I showed earlier to create this image of the face in the sand. So here you can see a test where we've got essentially a fairly static, for this example, set of particles. Each of these will be, when we've added the colouring and that sort of thing, will represent sand particles. And we've taken that image of the face and pushed that through here, and we're actually able to affect what happens to the particles based on that image. So we can use that in the actual final stage where we take the particles and render them to give a gross shape of the face, and then we can also use it in our particle simulation that's creating the action of the sand so that it looks like the sand is being distorted by the face as it emerges. And then the result of all that is this final image of a face emerging from the sandstorm.
That's the idea.
There's a sort of awkwardness in doing special effects where clearly you're not working with any acting partner, but then again there's some advantages to it. The awkward bits is you may think that you're overacting, throwing your jaw open and screaming and expecting someone to come and take away my union card, but when you see the end result, obviously there's a creature that's put in there and whatever response you gave is entirely appropriate.
You have to think of how the actors or the stunt doubles are going to react to the CGI images. So you work closely, again, with the visual effects people to see what they need and especially what they don't need. You know, it's very difficult sometimes because you've got to know how things are going to react and you've got nothing to react to.
An advantage to working with someone who's not there, in this case, was our sequence at the end, which is an homage directly to Ray Harryhausen in the skeleton fight from Sinbad, when Rick takes on a room full of mummies.
Brendan was really great at being able to understand the sorts of things that we were bringing to the screen. He'd worked on George of the Jungle, so he knew a bit about how to work with synthetic creatures that aren't there when you are. And he did some incredible fight scenes, which end up being him alone with 12 computer-generated creatures. And when you see these scenes and you see him fighting against something that's not even there with real strength and real power, boy, that made our job a lot easier.
To create the effect, I learned a choreography with a bunch of stuntmen. Shot 2 passes with motion capture control cameras, and of course the stunt players were removed. John Burton from Industrial Light and Magic inserted mummies.
He was able to bring that physical power to the screen and hit the marks that we wanted them to hit with the motion control cameras flying all over everywhere. And that really allowed us to take our digital creatures and put them right in there with him, and they look and act like they're in the same space.
I could swing a sword right through plain air instead of like having to pull my punch for a stuntman, because obviously you wouldn't want to injure someone. So the effects are just so much more fluid and engaging.
Brendan in that particular take was really good. He hit his cues really well, and I think he acted the shot so well for us that we really could feed off his actual performance. So basically we got the action of Brendan defined by rehearsing with different stunt people to get every single character, you know, cued in terms of where Brendan would be spatially in relation to each and respective mummy, and then also have a sense of the flow of the action. And then each stuntman that was used to rehearse was actually put into a motion capture suit on set, and every single individual mummy was captured remotely. So basically what you're looking at right now is like a combination of 21 different characters that have been added, captured and added one after another in a shot to sync in the action of Brendan. So it's really a combo of different techniques: procedural animation, motion capture, data gathering, and then lots of keyframe animation to get the performance right and the way we wanted it.
Mummies.
There's 2 things we can do with the digital mummies. We can eat bits away of them so that they couldn't possibly ever have been played by a human, and the other thing we can do is chop them up. Here I've just got a pretty crude animation that I did. This gives you the general idea of of the mummy just being hit by our hero. Well, we've really got two mummies here, one of whom flies off and the other which is left standing here. What we've done is using lighting and different types of texture maps and a variety of computer techniques, we've actually had to create what's left behind and set it up so that we can easily go from this intact guy to this guy in two halves. The things that we'll add to this are obviously flying dust and bits of mummy stuff that fly all over the place to finish the effect off. What was fun about this shot is that Steven wanted something that was really dramatic, very action-driven, but also very, very funny. So on the set we had license to actually drive the performance of the characters. We pushed the cartoony aspect of the animation by fine-tuning the animation to match precisely eye direction, head directions, arms, and added some extra motion on the characters to be able to get them to do what we wanted.
This scary thing, you may somewhere in the back of your mind believe that it can't be real, but there's nothing on the screen that gives it away. You do believe it's real, and it's only if you decide to step away and realize you're sitting in a seat with a bucket of popcorn on your lap that it can't be real. But for that first moment, during that gasp, you're buying it 100%. And that's, I think, the key moment for any visual effects artist, to be able to grasp the audience that way.
I think it's a really good combination of what we can bring to filmmaking as a visual effect artist in terms of the variety and the scope of the work we've done, and also breaking new ground and raising the audience expectation to a new level.
If it's groundbreaking and it looks good, the audience is going to love it, and if it tells a story, the director's going to like it. They all kind of tie together.
You want people to go, wow, be they the director or the audience, or us, actually. I mean, you do want to have a challenge, that's for sure. I mean, that's what keeps it interesting, you know, always trying to make it better and better.
We will always be relying on actors to set the marks for what performance should be. And you're not going to be able to make a movie that's got performance that's the equal of great actors by using something that's not great actors.
The technology is by far and away more advanced than I'm able to really accurately describe, knowing exactly what goes on, but I feel quite at home with it, to tell you the truth. It's a very collaborative experience for me, and it's one that I love about filmmaking.
I thought the special effects were just amazing. I'd had to imagine what this rotting mummy would look like, and my imagination is very boring in comparison to what they came up with. It's just, incredible.
Everybody seems to be very surprised by the movie, and I think they weren't expecting what we give them.
Working with Stephen Sommers has been one of the greatest experiences of my life as a filmmaker. He's just got tremendous enthusiasm for everything that he's working on. And we have tremendous enthusiasm for the things that we want to bring to him. And the more that he's enthusiastic about the work that we're doing, the more we're enthusiastic about the work that he's doing. And it's been a really great collaboration.
I think he's just so enthusiastic to be making this picture because why? Who knows? He's constantly going. He has boundless energy.
He's got more energy than I've never met a human being with quite that much energy. He's really bouncy, happy, inspiring, fun. He's just made the whole shoot really easy and fun.
He loves these kind of like big roller coaster films, and he knows how they work, and he knows how he wants to write them, and he knows how he wants to make them. So he's just like like a big kid.
I think he's truly supremely talented, and he's going to go on to great things. And it's certainly the most comfortable I'd ever been working with a director. Just for some reason, we just clicked.
All the actors in this movie were just not only were they good actors, but they were all sweethearts, and that makes a movie like this, the size of it, the complexity of it, the difficulty of the whole thing, it really made it wonderful to work with these people.
Well, everybody always asks, when are actors going to be put out of work by digital technology? And I always have the same answer, which is never. We have such a tremendous challenge ahead of us to try to create a digital actor that can perform the way a real actor can perform. And I have no doubt that the more that we start pushing digital performance, the more that we will, A, rely on real performance, and B, the real performers, being human beings, will rise to the challenge and will create performances that we can't hope to replicate in digital technologies. That's just the way it works. Reality has a complexity that is infinite. And until we come up with a computer that is able to calculate an infinite number of numbers, there's no way we're going to touch it.